right. I'm actually recording this right after. Actually, I'll be right back. All right. All right. We're back. So I'm actually recording this right after the God episode. So if I look a little disheveled, it's because I've been recording for like an hour now. So let's get into it. This one is going to be controversial, but I'm so glad that I have the opportunity to sit in front of a mic and yap about something like this, because this topic actually does mean something to me, as ridiculous as it may be for some other people. All right. The Tate brothers. The infamous misogynist Andrew Tate. So first I'd like to go over the current situation he's in right now, which is, actually it's over now. I actually watched the Piers and Tate interview. There's two of them. I encourage all of you to go watch them. And we're not going to make the Venn diagram. I'll describe it later, but the court case was, so first I'd like to say this. Andrew Tate, when he first started speaking out, I did not like him. I actually thought he was everything that they said him to be, right? I saw the clips, I saw everything. He seemed like some misogynist dickhead who didn't care about women. And that was before I started watching him, right? Because that's what struck my attention is, like, why is he standing out as such a dickhead? You know, like, if everyone hates him so much, why is the media on him so much? So I started, going in deeper and finding out, like, okay, he actually says a lot of genuine things when the clip is longer than 30 seconds. Or he was just joking when he was a kickboxer, because he used to be a kickboxer as well. And it's a different world when you're in a combat sport, you're just training with dudes all day. You know what I mean? So it's like guys are going to say stupid stuff. Especially, because I can only imagine, because I train boxing. So it's like, if I was world champ, I'm probably training around the clock with my boys all the time. Like, eventually I'm going to, hop on. And he would, it's like random videos where he has like a machete and he's like waving it around, talking about just ridiculous stuff. The clips of him are always very short and, they have an agenda. Anyways, court case. So when he started speaking out, he first said that you get 3 strikes in this life once you speak out against the agenda, against the Matrix. Right now, it's a wild term, right? The Matrix, but I'm gonna use it multiple times, and we're gonna define this term in a way that's not so conspiracy theorist, right? Let's just say it's an agenda, because there are a lot of people who have a lot of money in this world, right? And some people make money off being sick. Some people make money off of wars. Some governments make money off of drugs. Like, there's some sketchy things that happen around the world, okay? So, let's say, the Matrix is that sketchy force in the world, right? Greed, something like that. Whenever you go against this agenda, he said, the first thing they do is try and silence you. So they cancel you on everything. They get rid of you on all platforms, and then they slander your name so that you can't fight back. Then they try and lock you in jail for no reason. And then he said that the last thing they do, if neither of those two things work, is try and kill you or have you killed. And so, or frame your death. Those are like the things he would say. So the first happened, right? He got canceled overnight, which is very, 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 very interesting, right? That's really where I started to like him, really, because that's never happened before, right? That doesn't happen to anybody. And the biggest thought was like, okay, so we're going to go, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. We're going to ban him from all of these things actively. I mean, I've posted a few TikToks with Andrew Tate sounds, and they get taken down immediately. It's like actively we're going to hunt this man off of our platform for the things he's saying. That's questionable, right? And so if you have a negative view on Andrew Tate, I'll explain to you why I have a positive view of Andrew Tate. And it's because he encourages young men to take care of the women in their lives. And he encourages them to be strong. He encourages masculinity, which I think that we need in this world. And I mean, the biggest thing, another thing that should raise red flags about the cancel of him is that the biggest word they used when they took down Andrew Tate was misogynist. But the only reason, and a big reason, and this always happens at the end of his speeches, right? Because he'll tell men, be big and strong, do this, get all these things in life. And at the end, he always talks about how it's like to protect the women in your life and to be a good dad and to be a good influence to those around you and to bring up your boys and to be a good inspiration, and to be a good man, and that's what we need more of in this world. So that's why that's why I'm making this. That's why I'm trying to turn people's opinion around, is because he's trying to make strong men, and we need that right now. There's a good quote that says, easy times create weak men create hard times create strong men, and strong men create easy times. And I think we might need strong men right now. Let's see. There's so much to go over when it comes to Andrew Tate. Another thing is he's very God-endearing. And he assumes, whenever he speaks on suffering, he assumes the position of gratefulness in his suffering. And I value that quality so much, And so that's another thing that I think, he's a good role model for young men, because a lot of men are suffering nowadays and they take their own lives because of it, And so if we can even just turn that around, if we can even just turn the idea of suffering into a test from God, when that weight gets heavier, you get stronger. We need to embrace that idea in young men and stop this, epidemic of suicide. There's a lot more problems to this than meets the eye. So back to the fact that he was overnight canceled. I actually have found two more examples of this in history. It was you might be very accustomed to these two people, Socrates and Aristotle. So early 300 BC, Socrates was executed at 70 on account of, verbatim, corrupting the city's youth. He was charged on impiety. And that was also the reason for Tate's banning, right? It was, he's corrupting the youth. He's corrupting the young men, right? Interesting. The parallels are insane because Socrates' quotes are still around. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can go to the nearest library and you're going to find a Stoic book full of Socrates. And then 80 years later, the same thing happened to Aristotle. And Aristotle even pleaded to the government. He said, I will not let mankind sin against philosophy twice. And that's huge, because it's like we're doing it again. We're doing it again. When will we let philosophy win over young men? When will we let, because it's like, what could we really do if we work together? Now that we have the technology, the connection, what could we accomplish if we work together as men? We've conquered the world. Let's fix it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have so much power, and it gets stuffed out so that those at the top can keep their freedom. Probably, right? Who am I to say anything crazy? But, I mean, you just look at it from the top to the bottom, and that's kind of like the system you see. You know what I mean? Another thing is that these these disaffected youth, these disaffected young men that they are always talking about, that Piers talks about, Piers Morgan in that Tate interview. All the disaffected youth they speak about are disaffected from the short clips that they are pushing around. You know, because they see these short clips of Andrew Tate with a machete messing around talking about, oh, man, I chopped somebody's head off, or, you know, talking about being a pimp or something. You know what I mean? Like, he'll say some stupid stuff, and then they'll push around that clip, and then that will disaffect young men because, you know, everyone's talking about Andrew Tate for different reasons, and they saw these few clips, right? Which is my early stages of hearing about Andrew Tate. And so it's like, in trying to push around this false narrative, they've also gained a false story. Sorry, a false story where that they can use against or with, in accordance with their false narrative, right? And so, speaking of those clips, I noticed that when it comes to Tate, you could make and I encourage, if you really want to get into this and you really don't like Tate and you're a dedicated person to your opinions, go watch a few interviews, go watch a few podcasts, and, you know, maybe like look them up on TikTok or something, watch some clips. I've noticed that if you made a Venn diagram of what you agree with and what you disagree with, all of the long format content would be in the agree list, and only some of the short form content would be in the disagree list. Right? And so that's anybody though. Right? And so that's like you go to Joe Rogan, right? I've watched old Joe Rogan, and he used to be sponsored by Fleshlight. He used to say some crazy things on that podcast that I wish I didn't hear. Him and Joey Diaz would tell some crazy stories. Some I've definitely skipped over. So it's like, you know, if you go through someone's past on the internet and you search the whole fucking wide web for the last 10 years, odds are you're going to find one fucking 100 dumb videos. You know what I'm saying? Even me, you know, this podcast, like, I look at the first episode and I hate it. I'm like, oh my gosh, don't show me that. Like, I don't want to listen to it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to look at it. It probably looks so bad. But, you know what I mean? So it's like, as time goes on, we have to consider, rethinking who people are. We have to stay fluid. You know, we can't have that ego mindset of you are this person and you can't change from them. That's not love. You know, that's that ego love so that you can feel safe, so that you can know, oh, this person's messed up, I can stay away from them. I think that's like or so that you can fit in, right? I think that was a big part of it, was like, oh, do you like Andrew Tate? You know, it's that feeling you have to say no. You know, I'd be saying yes, but I know a lot of people who will say no when like women are around, you know, but it's like he's not misogynist. It was just pushed that way, you know? And so, again, it's like we're fighting over these false narratives. It's like, what have they done to us? They being, because, you know, it's like media sources pushed him around a lot before. He was on the news a lot and stuff like that about corrupting the youth before he got canceled. So that's what I'm talking about when I say that. But and another thing about Tate that I think truly and genuinely, I think he's just 100% genuine. It sounds crazy, but I mean, his background, his demeanor, his intention. It's really his intention. He has nothing to gain. He has hundreds of $1 million. He could disappear if he wanted. He has, 30 supercars, something like that? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, what does he really have to gain from this? A legacy? Maybe. You know, but it's like, there's more than that. At that point, you might as well just actually help the youth. You know, you could change the world at that point. And it's kind of like, see, and another thing is like the way I think he is in union with God as well. I think he understands that relationship with God pretty well. I've heard him talk about it a few times. And when I see him on podcasts, I notice interviewers always just try and get to him. You know, it's always just this contest of like, can I make him admit something that I can clip up and send around so that everyone hates him? You know, but it never works. And I realize it's because he's genuine. And I wrote down, as I was watching the interview, I wrote down, the only armor without chinks is no armor. And I think that's kind of how he operates, is like, he doesn't, like, there's nothing to be found out, you know? He just does what he does. He just makes money, lives his life with his brother, and just, you know, tries to help young men. And another thing, back to his banning, it's like, and back to, you know, this idea of like an agenda being pushed. It's like they banned him overnight, but there's plenty of rappers and, right, we got like drill artists out here talking about murder and killing your ops, and you know what I'm saying, like, we got people like we also got, you know, stab rates in the UK are through the roof. I mean, gun violence in the US, we've got all this violence going around, and we don't silence any of that, you know, but we silence Tate. It's just like, as the people, we should question, because it's like he's being withheld from us. You know what I mean? He's being held from the people watching this, from me, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I can't watch him on TikTok or Instagram, or, you know, he gets pulled from everything. It's like they're taking someone from us. They're shielding someone from us. You know, the same way they chopped off Socrates' head, you know what I'm saying? The same way they took out Aristotle. It's that same thing. They're trying to push that away. And Andrew Tate had a great point. He said, the reason they want to keep young men down is because they need them to fight their wars. And I think that's an unfortunate truth of the world that we live in. You know, because really, if all the young men rose up, you know, if we all became God consciousness, it's like we wouldn't have wars, right? But then no one would profit from them. No one would be on top at the end. No one would be selling the bullets. So it sucks that people profit from so much evil. You know, that's where the most profit is, it seems. But not really, right? Because it's like, it's that Tao Te Ching verse of, I say what you gain is more trouble than what you lose. In having nothing, you truly can have everything. It's that. It's like, the more you grab for, the more you don't have, you know? Like, the bigger, I don't know, it's just like you create a hole within yourself trying to look for something, you know, and when you're done looking, there's nothing to fill it, right? But God. And now another thing is, Piers, in this argument, I thought this was really interesting because I feel like Piers kind of argues the agenda. And he denied the argument that most men live lives of inherent suffering. And I thought this wasn't just an absolute insane take with the way the world's going on, because I looked up the cause of death, and from 1-year-olds to 19-year-olds, from 1 to 44, the number one cause of death was unrelated injury or accident. From 1 to 19, the number two cause of death, I think in the world, it's either in the world or in the U.S., I apologize for not knowing directly, but it's homicide. From 1 to 19, the number 2 cause of death is murder. That is insane. That's not right. And the number 3 cause of death is suicide. And from 20 to 44, and this is for men, the number 2 cause of death is suicide, and the number 3 cause of death is homicide. You know? So it's like, we are living lives of inherent suffering. You know, and it's awful to see. We're out there killing ourselves or killing each other, and it's not right. You know? And someone comes along and they try and stop that. They try and fix it. They try and help young men, and they push them away. You know? That's the biggest problem I have, is like, A lot of men, this is Joe Rogan quote, a lot of men live lives of quiet desperation. And it's just more true than almost anything in the world, especially now, because I've realized that my generation was a generation, I feel like we don't have a lot of leaders in our generation. You know, we don't have a lot of strong leaders to look up to. We've got fucking Joe Biden and Trump and all these old guys. No one wants to look up to them. We don't have, you know, billionaire Andrew Tate with the 30 cars. It's like that's why he blew up, is because finally young men had someone to look up to that wasn't stifled and shut up, you know? And so I encourage you to revoke your opinion on Andrew Tate and really consider that he might be the best thing for young men that's happened in a long time. You know, because the stats say it themselves. That shit gets to me. Even reading that, like, God, we're just killing ourselves and each other. It's crazy. Number 2 and number 3, like, that's, come on, man. We got to find God. We got to love each other. We got to do better. So, you know, if you're a woman listening to this, I encourage you, to the men in your life, you know, put them onto this podcast or put them onto Andrew Tate. Because even if they're as good off as you think they could be, I think they could be a little better if they, you know, watch that interview with Piers or just listen to some of the things he had to say. So I think it's worthwhile, absolutely. And I think that if you're a young man or if you're an older fella, you got to check him out too. Just check him out. Listen, hear him out. Hear the things he talks about, because if this entire world of men, if they all listen to Andrew Tate and they all, you know, followed the advice given, we would not be murdering and killing each other like that. You know, we would not be, it would not, number 2 and number 3 would be different. You know, we got to change that. That's on us too. It's like, I feel like this generation hasn't felt the responsibility of the world yet, you know, because we have a lot of our government is very old. A lot of our government leaders are pretty old. And so we haven't realized that we're the ones who have to change. We're the ones who have to step up. We're the ones who have to make a real difference. You know, we have to break the mold. We have to, you know, destroy Christianity and make it anew. And we have to destroy masculinity and femininity and stop this war between us and stop this ego. You know, we have to do so much change to really find God in our society. And I think Tate is a great form of that change that needs to be much more mainstream. You know, it's not even like we should let him back. It's like we should encourage him. You know, get that Piers interview, get that moving around, man. Watch that and send it to people, you know. And I hate to be some kind of weird advocate, but reading that 2 and 3 really got to me, you know. Because, I mean, after 40, because 45 and 64, 1, 2, and 3 are sickness, you know. And I mean, that comes with age, but to see that it wasn't a sickness at 2 and 3, that it was homicide and suicide, I mean, that's heavy. Because what does that mean for me? You know, I'm 19. You know, you're telling me until I'm 44, the odd that if I'm going to die, it's going to be one of 3 things: homicide, suicide, or an accident. Like, that's a dark world we live in. You know, that's the reality. Men live lives of inherent suffering. And that's another thing. I hope if you're a woman listening to this, I hope you get the idea of how to make your man better. And I think that also from the Love podcast, we discussed that. You know, like, what can you do in love? Like, if you're in love with someone, which is in a relationship, right? Trying to make a family, you know, making them a better man is very important, you know? And understanding that men live lives of inherent suffering is important, obviously. If you know, even if you're a dude, bro, like, check on the homies, you know what I'm saying? Like, you 2 and 3, man. Fuck. All right, I'm gonna end this episode, but I hope I gave you something important, and I hope you go check out Tate after this. I'm out.